Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dager, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Tony Allwork. Tony is the pioneer of the jobs to be done theory, the inventor of the outcome-driven innovation process, and the founder of the strategy innovation consulting firm Stratagen. His latest book, Jobs to be Done, solidifies this framework and picks up where his first book might have left off, which was What Customers Want. So, Tony, thanks for joining me. Well, Eddie, let me just mention the thing about startups, because startups always have this brilliant idea, right? Okay, this is what's going to work. And you say the idea first is a failed approach, but how do you do that? I mean, you still got to have the idea first, right? But then investigate and more, let's say the lower scale like a startup?
Well, you can have people have ideas all the time, right? I think the question is it a good idea, right? So how do you judge a good idea, right? And the way I think about it is, if the idea is good, it's going to help people either get a job done better and or more cheaply. And that would make it a good idea. So then you have to figure out, well, what does better mean? Better against what? Better compared to what? And this is where ODI comes into play. What are the metrics people use to measure better? And better to me means getting the job done better. So in order to figure out if you're getting the job done better, you need to know what those metrics are, and you can then evaluate your idea against that set of metrics to see how well it's getting the job done. What we typically find is that most ideas don't get a job done that much better, but they hold the potential to get the job done a lot better. In other words, if you knew what the entire job was, you can keep modifying your idea, because an idea is often a platform, for a solution. And if you know the entire job, you can start building on it and saying, okay, how do we build in different subsystems to get the entire job done? And now you can conceptualize a winning product in a marketplace. So I think having the model is really effective in terms of explaining how to shape an idea into something that's going to win in the marketplace.
Can you just, maybe for someone that's not familiar with the framework, just kind of do the elevator speech on the framework to put some context to it?
Sure. Well, I think the basic concept's simple. People buy products to get a job done. And winning products, or products win, I should say, if they help people get a job done better and or more cheaply. So now we have to figure out what better and or more cheaply means. I think more cheaply is a little bit easier to understand, but better is complicated. Better along what dimensions. And this is where the whole process comes into play, where, like I said before, if we can break down what that job is and understand the metrics people are using to measure value, then we can figure out how they measure value, and we can figure out if our idea gets the job done better. So it's really just bringing methodology to the process so that we can evaluate our idea. And what we've learned over time is that if an idea gets a job done 20 to 30% better or more, people will switch. People won't switch if your idea is just going to get the job done 1% better or 2% better. So there's some threshold there. And once we know what that entire job is, we know what metrics people are using, we begin to stack the odds in our favor. The premise is really simple, Joe. What we're trying to do here is to define the target with a level of precision that allows people to hit it. That's pretty much it. And if we know the target, the chances of hitting it are a lot greater.
Well, one of the things you mentioned there is that functional value and that price thing. And, there's a lot of talk about, the social component of value and the emotional component of value. Is your framework include that, or is functional the main component?
Our model includes all that. In What Customers Want, the book that we put out in 2005, it lays out all the different components, and we talk about it again in our latest book. But there's really 5 different components that we consider: the core functional job, the related jobs, the emotional jobs and social jobs, the consumption chain jobs, which are associated with buying, receiving, setting up, storing, disposing of the product, and then the financial metrics that the buyer uses to measure success and value in getting the job done better and or cheaper. So those are the key components. So they're all included. So which one's more important? Well, what we've learned over the years is that if you're going to create a product that's going to win in the marketplace, focusing on the core functional job first is the key thing. And what I mean by first, I mean when you're defining your market, define it around the core functional job, not the emotional job. So you got to start somewhere, right? So we're saying the center of the universe for creating value is that core functional job. And once you've defined it, then you can define your emotional jobs and related jobs and consumption chain jobs around that core functional job. That's really the key. And a lot of people get tripped up with this and they start focusing on some other element first. But think about it that you're just trying to, everything is revolving around that core functional job. So getting it right is really the key to success.
Well, to me, it sounds like, when I go to a customer, there's maybe a lot of jobs that need to be done in this whole process, okay? Or thinking about it. I mean, if the first person I go into, maybe I'm talking to someone that's worried about the functional side. The other thing is how it plays on to different components within because it affects other people in the company. So when I look at this job to be done, how tight is that, or is there a lot of jobs that need to be done when I investigate here?
Well, so there's two parts of this show. One is market selection, and then one is actually focusing on a particular market. And I see a bit of confusion in this as well. There are lots of jobs that customers are trying to get done. Absolutely. The first step is to pick one. Pick the one that you want to focus on. We call that market selection. You're trying to pick a group of people and a job that they're trying to get done. So it could be parents who are trying to pass on life lessons to children. It could be an anesthesiologist who's trying to monitor the patient's vital signs. There's obviously tens of thousands of jobs. You're trying to pick one where there's lots of job executors. They get the job done frequently. They're underserved. They're willing to pay more. But that's all market selection details, right? So you're trying to pick the group of people in the job that you want to focus on. Okay, first step. Now, once you've concluded that, then you move on to say, okay, now that I know what job I'm focused on, let's dig into detail. Like if my job is to focus on parents that are trying to pass on life lessons to children, and I choose that that's my market, now I go study that functional job, passing life lessons on to children. And I break it down into its component parts and understand how parents measure success and value as they're trying to perform that job. Is there an emotional component to it? Absolutely. They also want to be perceived as good parents. They want to feel like they're contributing to the growth of society. There's a lot of emotional jobs attached to that, but the core functional job is they're trying to pass on life lessons to children. There's related jobs too. They want to make them a better adult. They want to help them learn. They want to teach them to learn. Those are related to that core job as well. So you could focus on some of those related jobs in addition. There's consumption chain jobs. People would have to buy that product. They'd have to learn how to use it. They'd have to store it. They'd have to upgrade it. Those are the core, consumption chain jobs that need to be focused on. So that's how all the pieces come together. Hopefully that's a reasonable explanation.
Sure. Your offer as a Kindle Unlimited book is fantastic for people to pick that up. I can't imagine anyone, in business that doesn't pick it up if they're a Kindle member, okay? I would like to thank you very much, Tony. This podcast will be available on Business 901 iTunes Store and the Business 901 blog site. So thank all the listeners for listening.